Yo, what is good, my people? It is Dilly D back with another video for you guys today. I just quickly want to say as well, thank you to every single one of you guys that watched the D's Barbarian video guide. I do appreciate all the kind feedback. That was absolutely beautiful to see. And like I say, I'm very new to these guide videos, but I hope you enjoy this one. So this is definitely by far the best battle healer that you can take into those wars, into those PvP situations, as long as you have got a group behind you, as this is primarily a support role. I will be going over the pros, the cons. I'll be talking a little bit about the skills and attributes. I'll be covering the perks for both of the weapons, and I'll be covering a little bit of the PvP must-knows. So, number one, we are going to be going into the pros, and I just want to say this build has a very high amount of healing done. End of story. There's literally no other way of me putting it, alright? Especially when you're in those groups, you are going to be dishing out some serious amounts of heals. Number two, it is very strong in CC and controlling the fights. Obviously, with the Ice Gauntlet, it's going to be super tricky for the opponent to get close to you. You know, you've got a lot of CC, and especially in those wars, you're going to be controlling the fights entirely. This build is very strong for the backlines in wars. You know, you are going to be wanting to be behind those tanks, behind the DPS, and dishing out as much healing as possible. You are a support role, and that is what you're here to do, you know? Number four, you have decent movement with the quick dodges. You know, we are going to be going for medium armor here for that slight bit of damage mitigation, because a dead healer is no healer, boys. You know what I'm saying. Obviously, just to add to that, you know, we don't want to be going for the light armor because that is going to be giving us damage buffs, but we're not really out there to do the damage. You know, we're here to heal and we're here to play the support role. Know that. The cons are as follows. I did want to cover a few of them today. So, obviously, number one, it is not very sustainable. You know, there's not a lot of damage mitigation that you are going to be doing. It is very, very low. And like I said previously, this build is meant for support. You potentially are wanting to focus on effectively winning those team fights. You know, you are the healer. You're playing a distinctive role. You're not out there to just run in and 1v4 a group of tanks, okay? So stay in your lane, boys. You know what I'm saying? The final thing I will say, which is a con, and obviously I wanted to cover everything about this build right now, but you are very vulnerable when on cooldowns. You know, the Entombed from the Ice Gauntlet is going to be one of your main things to get out of that fight, to get out of the damage. And when that's on a cooldown, there's not much else you can do. You know, you're going to have to just maintain that distance away from the fight, like I said. Boom. So bear that in mind. Bosh! So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. I am going to be trying to keep this video as short and as to the point as possible, you know? So, number one, Absolved. Light Staff's light and heavy attacks no longer take mana. This is Healer 101 for you guys right now. Mana is going to be everything, and you definitely don't want to be running out of it. Make sure you're stacking up on those pots, and make sure you're getting Absolved first, because you don't want to be costing mana, obviously, when you're shooting light and heavy attacks into the crowd. The next one we're going to be going for after that is Mending Touch. It means Life Staff's heavy attack now removes one debuff when passing through an ally. Now, this is beautiful for those wars and for those big PvP encounters, you know, where you will be sat at the back. You will be shooting heavy attacks through the tanks, through your own tanks, into the enemy players. And obviously, this will be removing debuffs. So, very, very, very good stuff. Make sure we're going for this as soon as possible. The third passive that we will be going for is Blissful Touch. It means that light attacks now heal a target for 20% weapon damage when passing through an ally. Again, very, very useful. It is going to be healing the target now for 20% of your weapon damage. So, you know, those light attacks are going to be so useful, considering they're not even costing you any mana, and you could just dish out that healing as much as possible. That is the main priority for this build as a support role, to just heal, heal, heal. The next one I'm going to talk about is Revitalize. When you hit with a light attack, reduce all of your cooldowns by 5%. This is amazing stuff. Again, I spoke about cooldowns in my previous build guide video, and honestly, they are the most important thing that you can have going into this game. If your cooldowns are cooling down even quicker, it means you're going to be able to dish out those skills and you're going to be able to heal as much as possible. So bear that in mind. Revitalize, definitely one of the best passives that you can go for here. Desperate Speed is next. When you hit an ally with less than 50% health, the cooldowns are reduced by 10%. Can only be triggered once every 5 seconds. You want to be trying to get those cooldowns back up to full as soon as possible so that you can dish out some of your big healing skills. So the next one is Intensify. Heavy attacks give you increased healing for 10% for 10 seconds. This passive is probably one of my favorite on the entire list. You are wanting to be shooting out those heavy attacks, especially when you are in those big PvP encounters, shooting through, making sure that it's going through your teammates, getting rid of the debuffs, all that jazz, and then boom, 10 seconds of extra healing. Next one is going to be Sacred Protection. While holding a life staff, it increases the amount of incoming healing to all friendlies in your group by 5%. Boom! Again, another great healing passive here. Is going to be increasing all of the incoming healing for every single one of you guys in the group. Bear that in mind. It is only part of your group, but this is great for those, you know, smaller encounters, especially in open world PvP and in the wars. You know, if you're going to be listening to the call outs, listening to your tanks, you're going to be looking after them, especially with Sacred Protection. So we're going to dive over to the protector side now. Bend Light. After a dodge, your heals are 20% more effective for 5 seconds. This is amazing stuff. You're going to be dodging every single time. You know, before you are going to be using your actual skills, you want to be dropping a dodge just so that you do have that extra 20% effectiveness for 5 seconds. Protector's Touch. Life, staffs, light and heavy grants 15% Fortify for 3 seconds while hitting an enemy. Fortify reduces the incoming damage, so that is great. Again, if you want to be making sure that no one is dying in these situations, boys. All right, that's your job, that's your role, and I tell you what, it's probably one of the most important roles you can have. Protector Strength is the next one. If you have a buff, heal for 10% more. What more can you ask for there? That is incredible stuff. You know, buffs include some of the skills that we're going to be talking about. For example, Sacred's Ground or Beacon. All of these skills do count as buffs. So definitely want to be taking that passive to dish out as much healing as possible. The final passive that we're going to be speaking about before we do move on to the skills is Glowing Focus. Buffs that you grant last 20% longer. This is beautiful stuff, especially with the likes of Beacon. You know, as soon as you're going to be shooting that onto someone, it's going to be lasting 20% longer. So bear that in mind, boys. So the first skill that we are going to be covering now is Sacred Ground. This creates an area on the ground that lasts for 15 seconds and heals 20% weapon damage every second. This is primarily going to be one of the best ways of healing large groups of members. We want to be maxing this out with Holy Ground and Blessed as soon as possible. The Holy Ground is going to regenerate stamina and mana 100% faster while in Sacred Ground. Now this is very good, especially if you are going to be in a closer encounter, maybe like a 5v5 situation or something like that. Not necessarily in the wars, but it is going to definitely affect your teammates. You know, stamina and mana is one of the most important things in the game, like I mentioned in my last video. Pay attention to this. You are going to be wanting to max that out. Blessed. While allies are in Sacred Ground, they are healed for 50% more from healing. Max this goddamn skill out straight away, boys. Again, it says it in the name. It says it in the description. You're going to be healing 50% more, all right? Get them stood in Sacred Ground as soon as possible. It is going to be the first skill that you throw down when you are trying to burst heal, when you are trying to keep your tanks alive. Definitely pay attention to this one. The next skill we will be covering is Splash of Light. Now, you and all group of members within 100 meters are healed for 50% weapon damage. Now, this is a great healing spell. However, I've discussed this with some of my company mates and some of the officers as well, and you know, these guys have gone over it, and majority of them that did play the healing builds in the betas have said the same. We aren't going to be wanting to max this out. The Shared Recovery and the Purify, unfortunately, just doesn't match some of these passives on the skill tree. So we definitely want to be grabbing Splash of Light, but we don't want to be maxing it out. We would rather go for the passives in this scenario. The final skill that we are going to be talking about is Beacon. Shoot out a light projectile that deals 146 weapon damage to enemies, attaches to its target, and heals all nearby allies for 20% weapon damage for each second for 10 seconds. Oh my days, boys. This is what I like to call a bad boy skill. We're going to be maxing this one out nearly with Infused Light and Radiance's Blessing. The beacon lasts 5 seconds longer, and the beacon area of effect is now 50% larger. We aren't going to be going all the way to grab Speed of Light because, you know, the haste is important, but you've got haste potions and things like that that are just going to be, again, ineffective. Do take my advice for that one. Those are the skills, and real quickly, I'll be diving into the attributes for you guys so you can see. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen my D's Barbarian guide, but I did speak about it a little there. I'll repeat basically what I said, and I'll summarize it as quick as possible. So, you do want to be building your attributes around each one of these checkpoints here. As you can see, each checkpoint that you grab, whether it be Intel, Focus, Constitution, they're going to be giving you a buff every 50 points that you put in. It means that you don't want to be building 100% into just Focus or just Constitution or just Intelligence. As great as that can be, you definitely want to be thinking about how your build is going to play. And obviously, with us being a support healer, and especially with us being a battle healer, we are going to be stuck in, and we are going to be wanting at least 50 points into that Constitution for the 20% stronger health consumables. I will tell you why. And Entombed, as part of the Ice Gauntlet, is definitely going to be something that we consider here. You know, you're going to be popping a health consumable when you are under attack, and you're going to be using that Entombed in order to heal up to full as soon as possible. You know, like I said before, if you're not alive, there's no heals that are going to be pumped out. So that's the reason we have gone for the medium armor, and that's the reason we are going to be putting 50 points into the Constitution. So the next part is the Focus. We are going to be building 3 stacks of Focus here with 150 points. The first one's going to give you the 10% mana regen. The second one is going to give you 20 to your mana pool. And the third one is the main one here, which is going to be giving you 20% extra healing output. This is talking at the very start of the build, you know, maybe up to about the level 40 mark. But you will be going more and more into Focus. You will be diving as much points as you can into Focus, but definitely try to consider a little bit of Constitution if you are wanting to be able to take a little bit more damage and stay alive during those battles. So we won't go further into the attributes today, but we will talk about the second weapon now, which is the Ice Gauntlet. So first things first, we're going to be going for Cold Reach, which is a passive that increases damage of light and heavy attacks by 50% for targets further than 15 meters. Now this is great. You definitely want to be dishing out as many light and heavy attacks in between encounters. You know, you've dished out all your healing, your skills are on cooldown for your life staff. You switch over to that Ice Gauntlet and you just try and dish out as much extra damage as you can. You know, you are playing that support role and you want to be trying to CC as much of the enemy as possible. That extra damage is going to be great, especially at those further ranges, considering you are on the back line and you are going to be covering the guys at the front. The next passive is Quick Frost. We're going over to the builder side now, and this increases speed by 10% in a frosted area. Again, just a great little passive to have, considering you will majority of the time be in those frosted areas, you know, especially in those close encounters. Empowered Frost is going to regain you 3 mana for each spell cast whilst in a frosted area. This is, again, a great little passive and something that will be working off, which I'll talk about soon, which is Ice Storm, the first skill that we're going to be going for, which is a frosted area itself. The next one is Refreshing Frost. Reduce all active cooldowns for ice abilities by 20% when casting an ability in a frosted area. Again, very, very nice, very useful. Every single one of these passives that I'm mentioning is going to be useful when you are in those frosted areas, which is basically once you're in Ice Storm. Frozen Touch, slow enemies by 25% for 2 seconds while they hit you with a melee attack whilst you have 100 health. Now this is basically your get out of jail free card, boys and girls. This is going to be amazing for those PvP encounters. If you do get pressured by an enemy, they do hit you, it's going to slow them for 25% and gives you enough time to get out of there. Bear that in mind. Defiant Freeze is the next passive. It's casting an ice ability, creates an ice hardened layer, granting 20% fortify for 2 seconds. Now again, this is why I've called it the battle healer, because you are going to be able to mitigate some damage. You're not exactly a tank, but you are going to be able to stay alive in those encounters and, you know, absorb a little bit more damage than the average healer would, say. So the first skill that I'm going to be talking about is Ice Storm. We mentioned it briefly before, but it's a ranged attack that deals 17% weapon damage every 0.25 seconds and slows enemies within a 5-meter radius frosted area. 25% slow, 20-meter range, and 5-second duration. Now, boys and girls, this is definitely one of the best CC abilities that you can get across the board, in my opinion. It is going to be dishing out some very high damage. Even if you're not a full int build, this is still going to be doing some great damage and causing the enemies a lot of problem with the slows. You do want to be maxing this out with Weakening Gust, Storm Summoner, and Punishing Storm. You know, incoming damage increased by 10% for 3 seconds to enemies in the Ice Storm if below 50% health. We do have Storm Summoner, which is Ice Storm mana cost is decreased by 80% at full mana, which is very, very useful if you do want to be throwing this one out first, which in a majority of situations, if you are controlling the fight, you do want to be throwing out Ice Storm, and this will definitely help if you are at full mana. Punishing Storm is the final one in it. Increases the damage by 10% for each enemy in Ice Storm. Now, this is where the war situations come into play. You know, if you're throwing Ice Storm onto those points, every single enemy that's in Ice Storm, it is just going to be increasing your damage by 10%. Each enemy, which means if those tanks are on those points and you throw an Ice Storm, pray for the tanks, boys. That's all I'm saying. The next skill that we are going to be talking about is Ice Pylon. It is basically a pylon that you throw down, and it's going to deal 50% weapon damage at enemies within a 20-meter range for 15 seconds or until killed. Ice Pylon creates a 1-meter radius frost area that enables frost powers. Now, remember what I said before, boys and girls. These passives right now are going to go hand in hand with Ice Pylon. This is your guardian angel that is going to protect you, and it is going to grant you with all of these passives that I mentioned before. Basically, it is your frosted area, your own little frosted area that you could just throw down instantly whilst continuing to dish out as much healers as possible. And I tell you what, it's going to protect you in a lot of these situations. You do want to max this out. We've got Greater Pylon, Pylon Regen, Pylon Dodge, Pylon Refresh, and Ultimate Frost. You know, the final passive there is absolutely incredible. The fact that it plays for the Ice Pylon with this ultimate, and it doubles the Ice Pylon's health and extends the Pylon Frost radius to 5 meters. Standing in this area doubles Quick Frost and empowered Frost bonuses. Trust in the Ice Pylon, boys and girls. It will defend you. It will grant you the buffs. Throw it down before you are going to be dishing out those heals. We've got Entombed as the final skill here, and this is basically where a player entombs himself in an ice block to become invulnerable and greatly increase mana regen. The Ice Tomb has a lifetime of 10 seconds and can be destroyed. Now listen, this is your get out of jail card, boys. Again, a very, very useful skill. This is when you are taking pressure from the enemy players. You don't want to be taking pressure. You're a support role. You're not there to take any damage. This is going to save you. This is going to allow time for your teammates to jump back into the fight. It is going to throw them off entirely. And, you know, you can even dodge straight out and continue to dish out damage. You want to max this out with Strengthened Tomb and Cleansing Tomb. And this one I will talk about because it's very, very useful. It cleanses all debuffs whilst being entombed. So, you know, if you are going to be taking a few hits, you're going to be not only increasing your defense here for 3 seconds after, but you're going to be cleansing all those debuffs off your player. You know, you're going to be back out and ready to get those heals out as soon as possible. Now we will be diving over into the perks section of the video, boys and girls, and this is definitely one to pay attention to. You might have already heard about perks, you might have not, but this is something that is going to change the entire game eventually when people do start figuring these out. And, you know, as they bring more and more perks out for the different weapons, this is definitely one to pay attention to. So the first life staff perk that we'll be talking about today is Fortifying Sacred Ground. Now, as you can see there, allies healed by Sacred Ground gain Fortify, increase in damage absorption by 3% for 5 seconds. This is beautiful. This is one of the best perks you can get for the life staff, in my opinion, as it is going to be buffing one of your main heal skills, and it's going to be allowing people to stay alive for longer because their damage absorption is going to be buffed by 3%. What more can you ask for here? The second one we will be talking about is going to be called Energizing Splash of Light. And this, again, allies hit with Splash of Light gain 3 stamina. You, in a sense, this is going to be one of the underdog perks right here. But I tell you what, your allies are going to love you. The amount of times I have said that stamina is one of the most important things in those PvP fights, this is definitely going to be covering your allies' backs and allowing them to have that extra stamina in order to dodge, in order to block. So we will be jumping over now onto the Ice Gauntlet perks. The first one that we are going to be going for is Healing Tomb. Now look at this, chat. Gain 10% health after exiting Entomb with full mana. This is very, very useful. Again, a lot of these perks on the Ice Gauntlet, I would like to add, aren't that overpowered. However, this is super, super useful. If you are going to be jumping into Entombed and you haven't casted any spells, or you pop a mana pot and you jump into your Entombed, you are going to be healing up to full mana, and then as soon as you come out of it, you're going to gain that extra 10% health. Again, it's one of those extra perks that you can have just to try and keep you alive in those battles, because that is the main thing at the end of the day. The next one we're going to be talking about, again, is Pylon Burst. Adds a 1 meter radius damage AoE when the Pylon casts. This is incredible, considering we maxed out the Ice Pylon skill. As I previously just mentioned, this is definitely one to pay attention to here. You know, it's going to be adding that extra AoE damage and just covering your back, you know. You want to be buffing that Guardian Angel as much as possible. So, like I said, boys and girls, I am going to be keeping this video as short and snappy and to the point as possible. But these are my PvP must-knows that you guys definitely need to know about when you are diving into this build and giving it a try for yourself. The first one is simple, the dodge and switch. I covered this one in my previous video again, but this is a mechanic that you guys need to have down, especially as a healer. You want it to be moving around as quick as possible. You don't want to be wasting any seconds. And again, linking into some of the passive that we chose on the life staff, you definitely want to be dodging as much as possible. That's the extra healing for you right there. The next one is Stamina Drain. Now, even as a healer, you're thinking right now in your head that mana is going to be the most important thing. And I know sometimes focusing on the mana 100% of the time is what we like to do as healers. However, stamina is going to be the decider in those fights. You know, you have to keep an eye on your stamina just as much as your mana right now. If you run out of stamina, you're gonna, if someone attacks you during that phase of you running out of stamina, it is going to cause problems for you. So definitely keep an eye on this as much as possible. The third and final PvP must know, probably one of the most important, is timing your heal skills correctly. You don't want to be dishing out every single heal skill all on top of each other straight away. You want to try and save as much of the healing for when your teammates are low. And, you know, if you're going to be running, if you cool down on action and you notice that your teammates are going down and down and down, there is no way that you're going to be able to dish out as much healing as you need, because you've already used every single heal skill. And that's something that you need to pay attention to. So definitely at least save Splash of Light or Sacred Ground for a moment where you know that the team's getting attacked and you know that you need to keep those heals dishing out. Don't use all the skills at the same time. Make sure you're timing those heal skills correctly. Sometimes double up, you know, if you notice that there's a big push happening, definitely double up on some of the heal skills like Beacon and Sacred Ground. But it's one to pay attention to. And I know that a lot of you guys probably won't know what I'm talking about, but one day it will happen. You know, you'll be in a scenario where you are needed to heal and you'll be like, oh no, where's me goddamn skills? I've got cooldowns everywhere. And that is it from me today, ladies and gentlemen. I did want to share with you the full battle healer build guide, and I just want to quickly give a big shout out to Kroon, who supplied some of the footage for me. You know, he was one of our top healers in the first ever war that we played in. He ranked like 5th altogether, dished out nearly 1 million in healing, which was absolutely incredible. And like I said, I did play this in the open beta. And I just want to share, you know, my tips, my pros, my cons, and the full build with you guys so that you can maybe try it out in full release. So that is it from me today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in and watching the video today, boys and girls. I do appreciate you all. Make sure to go and follow us on Twitch. We're going to be live every single day after full release. It's going to be crazy. DSG and the boys are ready, and we can't wait to see you guys in game. Get in the Discord. Maybe even join us if you want to. And Dilly D is signing out. Peace.